Time for another board game review, and this time we have the game Kanban Drivers Edition. This was sent to me by Stronghold Games, and is designed by Vital Lacerda. In Kanban, you work in a factory focused on lean production. You must impress Sandra, the factory manager, who will review your performance and keep the factory ticking like a clock. Depending on the gameplay experience you want, you can choose whether to use Nice Sandra or Mean Sandra when you play. Kanban is pure Euro game with resource and opportunity management that puts you in the driver's seat of an entire production facility. The innovative action selection and factory manager make this a thematically rich and unique gaming experience. Let me show you how to play. In Kanban, your goal is to use your working hours or action shifts as efficiently as possible throughout the game. The idea is hours worked versus value produced, and efficient use of time is measured as productivity points. Now, at the start of the game, you have certification meeples. These are placed on 4 spots. You can choose this in random player order, and you will get certain benefits based on where you place your meeples. This will also be the turn order for the first department selection phase of the game. Then each player gets a car design from this department and a car part from this department. Now, each round represents a work day in the factory. During the first phase, you will take turns choosing a workstation in the department in which you'd like to work that day. And during the second phase, you will spend your shifts working and or training as you please in the department that you chose. So, for the very first round, you can choose where to place your worker. So, let's say orange player goes here, yellow player goes here, blue player goes here, and purple player goes here. One rule is you cannot pick the same department 2 days in a row. So for the next round, orange player cannot stay here. They've got to move to a different station. Meanwhile, Sandra, the factory manager, will also move. I'll show how that goes later, but in the very first round, she stays here. Now, every time you do this department selection phase, the order of what you choose is always from left to right. So let's say after the first round, they did all their actions. Orange player gets to choose, and they go, okay, they can't stay here. So let's say they decide, I'm gonna go here. Then yellow player can decide where they wanna go. Let's say they go here. Blue player decides, I'm gonna go here. And purple player decides they're gonna go here. Then Sandra always goes to the next right. In this case, she actually goes over here. After you select your departments, each player does their tasks. The number of shifts you can do is determined by the workstation you chose. In most stations, it's 2 to 3. So if you look under here, that means 2 shifts, and this is 3 shifts. If you have shifts banked in the shift bank, you can use them to work more. However, you're never allowed to work more than a total of 4 shifts in one day. Certain tasks and rewards let you bank shifts for use on later turns. Once you've done your task for the round, put your meeple to sleep. That way you can keep track of who has and who hasn't gone. At any time during your turn, you may recycle. You may take a car apart from your board and trade it for another one in the recycling pool. Only 1 part can be in each space. Only 3 parts are allowed in here at the same time. And you can do this as many times as you want as long as it's valid. So I could be like, I'm gonna put a black part here, take a yellow part. Now, there are 3 areas of the factory where Sandra wants to see some objectives fulfilled. First is getting a depicted number of certifications, which I'll explain in a bit. Also, claiming the depicted number of cars here, and upgrading the depicted number of designs with these. Each of the 3 areas has a display with a pair of gold tiles, each of which has 1 or 2 seats on it. The first person or second to reach that goal immediately receives 1 of these red seats, which you can use later to impress Sandra during a meeting, which we'll get to later. Once this has been completely achieved by 2 players, you flip it over. Whenever you are allowed to bank a shift, you can move your marker here to the right. You can use those to do extra actions later. At the end of the game, you are also rewarded for how many shifts you still have banked. Now, each department has its own training track, like this one here. When you work in a department, one of the tasks available is training in that department. Each stage of training requires 1 shift to complete and advances your marker. So if purple player, let's say trains, they move their marker up. If you reach the same stage of training as another player, you put your marker on top of theirs and you are ahead of them. Once you get past the 3rd stage of training in a department, you will be certified in that department. This will typically unlock a new portion of your board, and some provide a benefit within the department itself. So we'll get into those later, but they all unlock different benefits. Whenever you get certified, you then get to go on the certification track, pick one of these rewards, and put your meeple on. So let's say Blue got certified, and Blue goes, I want 3 points. They can go there. The other benefit to being certified is that the further you are ahead on this track, the more, or that's the order in which you get to score in meetings, which again, we'll get to later. Now, at this point, there's not really a reason to go through what the certification benefits are because you don't even know what most of the mechanics are. But just know that a lot of these will unlock like certain spaces on your board and things like that. They're all a little bit different, but that's the gist of the rewards. Now, one way to train on these tracks is homework. Anytime you spend a homework tile, you can move a disc on a track without using time. If you get all the way to the top of a track, you become an expert. Not only do you get, and if you do it first, you get a seat, and you also get an award plaque of your choice, which can give you prizes like, hey, a homework. At the end of the game, you will earn points for your relative position on each department's training track. All of them will be scored. If you're first, you get 5 points. Second gives you third gives you 1. And ties are broken by stacking order. If you're on top, you are ahead of other players. Another benefit of being ahead on the tracks is that whenever Sandra visits a department, they will review the most studious individual player. Or if you're playing the mean mode, she will punish whoever has the least in that department. I'm not going to go through all these, but basically, whenever Sandra goes into a department, she will see who is most and least studious, depending on the mode you're playing, and you will receive rewards or demerits, depending on what mode. So let's get into the meat of the game, which is the different departments and what they do. Let's start in the design department. Some of the designs have nothing, but others will have a car part upgrade that innovation can make. However, all of these designs allow you to claim the depicted car from the test track. We'll get to that later in the Testing and Innovation Department chapter. So, to take a design to your player board, you must spend 1 shift per design you take. So, orange player here has 2 shifts. I guess it would be more beneficial for them to do 3. So let's say 3 shifts. Each design you take is worth 1 shift or action point. You cannot take from these unless you are certified in this department. This isn't the right player board, but all designs go here, and you have to make sure you have room. Again, here's another benefit. If you are certified in this department, you'll have extra space. If you choose from these 4 spaces here, you'll get extra benefits. Like picking this one will give you a homework. Picking this one will give you a bank in the shift bank. And once you do that, you refill slots. So, pretty straightforward. These are how you get your card designs. And if I had 3 shifts, I could use up to 3 action points I could get 2 designs and I could train once. Or I could grab a car, train twice. It's really up to you. Now let's go over to the logistics department. One action you can do is issue a Kanban order, which is when you spend a shift, but it banks you a shift here. Then you select a Kanban order card from your hand. And now you have this little puzzle where you have to put this order where there's 4 on one side of this line and 2 on the other side of this line. Depending on how you do it, car parts will be replenished into the factory. So let's say I do this. You'll note here, there's white on this side, so 2 white go here, and a pink goes here. Then on this side, an orange goes there. If I did it this way instead, it would be like this. 2 white here only, because it's on that side. On this side, it would be black and orange. Then you return this card to the bottom of the deck and you draw a new one. Another action you can do is collect car parts. Spend 1 shift per warehouse from which you want to take car parts. So let's say I go, I want the white parts. You don't have to take all of them. You take any number of them. 1 shift. So I spend 1 shift. Let's say I take 3 of the white car parts. You just got to make sure you have room from them on your player board. If you are certified in this department, you can spend a shift to get a parts voucher. Parts vouchers can be spent as any part. Now let's go to the assembly line department. if there are any full assembly spaces here, you clear them if they're completely filled. In this case, nothing happens. Now, on your turn, you can use an action to provide needed parts. Your delivery allows the assembly line to keep moving. You can spend 1 shift to move a car part from your board to an assembly space on a model. The car part must differ from any others currently in the model's assembly spaces. Right now there's nothing here, so it doesn't matter. Move the car at the top of this line down 1 position along the arrows. When it gets there, it displaces this car, which can displace, you can choose. You can make it go this way or this way. Let's say we push it this way, and the green car gets pushed that way. Then place a new car of this model from the supply at the beginning of this line. Whenever a car is pushed off here onto one of these, you get the points marked here on the conveyor, and then you move that car to the first empty space behind the pace car. Like so. Only 4 cars in addition to the pace car can be on the track at the same time, so if a 5th car enters, you remove the car directly behind this and replace it. But in this case, there's only 1. If you manage to complete a model of one of the cars in demand, in this case black or red cars, you would get to take a seat from that demand tile. If you have any seats left face down at the conference table, you can discard that red seat and flip over one of your seats. Anytime you get a red seat, you always do this. They uncover seats for the meetings, which we'll get to later. And if there are no more seats on this gets put away and replaced with a new model, and new seats are placed on it. Now let's go to the testing and innovation department. To claim a car here, as an action, you must have a selected design on your desk that depicts the model you want. So if I want this green car here, I have to have a green design in my inventory. According to the position before claiming the first car, spend the appropriate number of shifts to take the matching cars from behind it. So the first car behind just takes 1 shift, and this is illustrated here. The second and third require 2, and the fourth requires 3 shifts. Then, after you take the car, you advance the pace car a number of spaces equal to the number of cars you took, and the other cars will follow along with it. Then, you get to place this car in any empty garage of your choice, and you'll immediately get the benefit under it, in this case, 2 homework tiles. When the pace car gets all the way to the other checkered space, you have enough test data and a meeting is scheduled at the end of the day. Move the meeting token from the test track to the administration department to remind yourself. So this goes over here, and that means you will do a meeting. Another action you can do in the testing department is upgrade a design. So let's say I had this in my inventory. It's a black car with a blue upgrade. I can spend a shift to move the car part from my board to any empty upgrade space for that model in innovation. So if I have the blue part, I can put it, if I put it here, I get a homework. Then you increase the value of that car by 1 step. Then flip that design over to the upgraded design, which shows the upgraded part, and place it to the right of your board, and you get 2 points. If you have an upgraded design and you have that matching car in your garage, that's called a tested design. So if I upgraded this to this and I have a black car in my garage, I can get points. The value differs for end of week scoring and final scoring. At end of week scoring, you'll get points for testing upgrades on the factory models, and in final scoring, you'll get points based on the car part value of your tested designs. We'll get into all that later. Now, the importance of these upgrades here also is that it determines what you need in this phase. So, if the black cars have a blue cube in the upgrades, then those have to be prioritized here first. And finally, there's the administration department. In this department, all you can do is train, but this lets you train in other departments. Now let's go into meetings. If you might recall, when the pace car reaches a checkered space, a meeting will happen at the end of the day. Now, in order to score points at the meeting, you need seats of your color. And there were several ways you can get seats: accomplishing factory goals, being the first person to complete given tracks. Anytime you get red seats, you unlock these seats at the meeting. On the table, there are 4 performance goals you will be considering. You also will have 3 in your hand. One of them in your hand is a pet project you must report. One will be your recommended goal for the next meeting, and one of them will stay in your hand. You will then take turns showing your accomplishments until you no longer have or want to use any seats from the conference table. and meeting order is determined by the certification track. So on your turn, you must either speak or pass. If you speak, place the pet project you've chosen face up, and then it's available for everyone to score from, like one of these. Then take one of your face-up seats that you've unlocked and place it on a performance goal of your choice to score points. This one, for example, says 4 points for each car, for each yellow car in your garage. So if you can score that up to 2 times as well. So put a seat on there. Let's say I had 2 yellow cars, I would get 8 points. Now this multiplier can only be fully activated by the first player to do it. So if I'm the first player to put a seat here, I can activate this twice, but the next person to put one here can only get 1 time multiplier. So only score for 1 of their yellow cars. A performance goal like this has a multiplier of 3, and this one means 2 points for each shift you've banked in the shift bank and score up to 3 times. So if I do this first, I could get a maximum of 6 points if I had that many. The next player to do it would only be able to score twice. Everyone will then take turns either speaking or they'll pass. So if you want to score another one, if you have another seat, you can place it on there and score the points if you have them. And then once everyone is done, all the seats get put face down. So once you've done the speaking phase of the meeting and everyone has passed, then any used seats are returned face down. And if you have red seats, you can flip up new seats. Then, all remaining face-up performance goal cards are discarded. Each player will then take one of their 2 cards face down and on an empty space and then reveal them. And those will be the new goals for the next meeting. Then each player draws 2 new cards from the deck, move the meeting token back to the infield of the test track, and advance the production cycle token 1 space. Now, at the end of the week, once Sandra makes it all the way back to her desk, she will do end-of-week scoring and will reward players for testing upgraded designs. For each car in the garage, you score upgrades to that model. 2 points for each upgrade you made, and 1 point for each upgrade someone else made. So let's say, for example, I had 2 yellow cars in my garage. And there were 3 upgrades on the yellow model, and 2 of those upgrades were ones that I did because I contributed them. You would get 4 points for the upgrades you did of that color, and 1 for one that somebody else did. And since you have 2 yellow cars, you would get 10 points. The production cycle marker and the week marker will track the end of the game. So whenever you do a meeting, this moves, and whenever the end of the week happens, this moves. When one of them is on the 3rd space and the other is on the 2nd, that triggers the end of the game. You finish the day, including a possible meeting or end of week scoring, and then do final scoring. At the end of the game, you will do final scoring. Move all of your face-up seats from administration to the seat space on your player board. And that's when you have these final goals here. Spend 1 seat per achievement you wish to score on the final goals. They are non-exclusive. Each player can do as many as they want. So this one, for example, this one says you get 8 points if you have 4 different models in your garage, 7 points if you have 3 upgraded designs for the same part, and 6 points if you are certified in assembly line and logistics. You will then score 1 point per shift in the shift bank, 1 point for every seat, book, or parts voucher on your board you haven't used. For each car in your garages, you earn points equal to the car parts value, and so that is what this is for. So depending on how valuable that part is, you will score points at the end, and score positions, like I said, for each training track, depending on who's 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and so on. You count the points at the end of the game. Tiebreakers are as follows: most cars, most sets of designs. There's a whole bunch of tiebreakers. But yeah, so that's pretty much the game. There is a mean version, and the biggest difference is when Sandra enters a department and ranks the research the research tracks. She will either give you rewards if you're playing nice mode, or punish you if you are the weakest if you're playing mean mode. But otherwise, that's pretty much it. You're going through departments using your shifts or action points to get car designs, get car parts, shove cars out of the assembly line, claim cards with your designs, match, you know, parts and upgrades, and get goals for the meetings when those trigger. And yeah, that's the game. So Vital Lacerda games are a lot. I've played a good number of them, and I find myself oftentimes being kind of overwhelmed by them, struggling at the beginning and by the end appreciating them, but also feeling exhausted. Kanban is no different. It's kind of a lot to take in at once, and it's definitely one of the heaviest games I've reviewed on this channel so far. Some oversights with this one are I feel like the game sorely needs action reference cards for everyone to see what exactly you can do in each section of the board. There is a lot to process in the beginning, and constantly looking through the rulebook is a chore. I don't know, like there's a reference card explaining the Sandra stuff and the meetings and shit, but there's nothing for just general action order and game flow. Like, come on. That and the rulebook itself is kind of a nightmare. It isn't structured very well. One thing I actually do like that I think a lot of people may not be a fan of is I actually really like how tough the worker placement can be. Because all the workers fall asleep, you find yourself blocked a lot because you got, okay, they're asleep, I gotta pick a spot. You gotta make the best of what you can get, and I actually like that. It helps that the game has those training tracks, which I really always love in games. Like, oh, you know, upgrade the training track and you get benefits. I love that in games. So you can always choose to use your action points to progress on those if you don't have enough to do what you need to do. What helps with a game as dense as this is that you get a random set of end game goals that can reward you with points. So even if you're totally overwhelmed, you can look at those 3 goals and go, okay, I just got to make sure I get those by the end. You have something tangible to work toward. And when you break down just how the whole car manufacturing system works, each individual section isn't that complicated. It just becomes a matter of getting everything done in time before the game's done. The meeting system was probably the most interesting part of the game to me. Having those objective cards that you're like trying to prepare get the chairs for with the red seats, and trying to make sure you time your certifications to maximize your rewards, make sure you're first in line for the meetings. That was very interesting. Sticking your claim on cards, and in the game the conceit is that, oh, Sandra gets bored if you are the second player to do one of the meeting goals. I actually think it's a really engaging idea because you're struggling to kind of push aside your opponents and squeeze out as many points as you can. That was very engaging. This is definitely a game I can only recommend to more hardcore players. It takes forever to set up. We had to read through the rulebook twice to fully grasp it. And then there are so many little systems. Some of them are a little too fiddly. And then it can be kind of hard to process in the beginning. But once a couple hours pass, you get a feel for the flow of the systems and you've learned the rules. And then you start digging for points whenever you can. It's definitely an interesting game. Like, I think the design is good, maybe a little much. And I do think the way it teaches itself and the way it's presented and the lack of action cards kind of sucks, but it's still good, just a lot.